What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of our conversation on the DISC assessment and the importance of testing during the recruiting process. If you missed us last week, the first episode talked about the importance of testing during hiring and recruiting, and specifically a lot of content on the DISC assessment, which is the test that we use. So make sure that you listen to part 1, which is in episode 5 of the Lead Counsel podcast.
Different personalities are suited more for different things. And it really comes into play and is extremely helpful in like an office setting, right? Because you can just understand better the team that you're working with. And like, for instance, like I'm a poor listener under stress. Like anybody who works with me knows that like they cannot come to me with something because I will not pay attention if I'm under extreme stress or focused on what I'm doing at the moment.
It's also a matter of, okay, now I know that about you, right? Maybe I say to you, hey, listen, are you in a space where you can focus on something? I got something important I got to talk about. Mm-hmm. And you ask for that permission first. And if somebody says to me, no, not really, okay, can we schedule a time when you're in a better space? Mm-hmm. That's way more effective communication. Yeah. And typically what I find is, as just an aside, and I know we're kind of moving all over because that's what I do as a high D.
Yep.
With conversations.
And this is where your high I sticks in too.
Yeah, for sure. But almost everything that goes on in an office space between people, if there's friction, can be related to something in the discs between the two of them.
Communication style.
Well, that goes back to the discs, right? So it's a inability to communicate in a way the other person can understand. Mm-hmm. A lot of it. Did you read the book, 5 Love Languages at Work?
I've heard of it and I know what the 5 are, but I have not read the book.
I don't remember. It's been a while. I don't know what the 5 are. I know one is gifts, one is touch.
Yeah. So
one's words of appreciation. And there's a couple
acts of service is one.
Okay.
And then I think the last one, I can't remember.
Okay. In any event, it's a great book. And I really thought it was fantastic. I haven't read the book, 5 Love Languages at Work, but if you think about it, if you're in a relationship with somebody, again, I'll use my wife as an example, and let's say her love language is words of appreciation. I think that's one of them. If I'm talking to her in my love language, which might be, it's not, but I know what it is, but let's say it's gifts, and I'm giving her gifts, she's not going to be moved by that because her love language is words of appreciation. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with the disc, right? If you need a certain type of communication, and I insist on communicating in my language, which is curt, brief, it has to be intellectually stimulating or I lose interest very quickly, then that's not going to work for high I.
Yeah.
And I value having you here. You're great at your job and I can't imagine anybody else in that role. So I have to learn to adapt my communication style. Well, how do I do that? Is by understanding your disc. And if you use these long enough and you expose to it frequently enough, you can actually, with a high degree of probability, know somebody's disc without them even taking it. Like I've gotten to the point where I can be, I know this person's a high I. Yep. Oh, I know this person's a high SC. And you pick up on those traits and it just helps you understand people and be a better communicator. So like, it's really valuable. So like just going through the rest of the disc really quick, they give you the natural and adaptive style. We talked about that already.
I like that they give you ways for improvement or areas that you can improve or maybe align more with your personality. Like it tells you like what your tendencies are and how to like approach them differently in any situation.
Yeah. So there's a section called time wasters, right? I love time wasters because it tells you what is your, like, so for me, for instance, I'm a high DI. One of my time wasters that I could be prone to is firefighting. I'm the person that would start the fire to fight the fire because I love the chaos. So what does that look like when you're a lawyer? that could be now again, I'm not practicing in the files anymore. I have a team of attorneys and paralegals, but that could look like waiting until 2 days before a motion is returnable to write an opposition because you like the pressure, which will make my SC paralegals insane because they need weeks to prepare for stuff. And I can give you a compare and contrast real life that I had. I've had experience with high D attorneys, DC and DIs. Those attorneys, I could drop a file on their desk at 4:00 and say, you're picking a jury tomorrow. And be like, all right, I'll let you know how it goes. If I do that with an SC, and I did do that once before I understood this better, the blood drains from their face and they completely go into a meltdown panic because they need weeks, if not months, to prepare for something like that. That doesn't mean they'll be any less effective, but you want to bring out the best in people by understanding how they function. That's my role as a leader, right? Like to understand how people best function and communicate. So time waste is a big thing. So for high I's, a big time waste you might be prone to is over socialization.
Yep.
Too much socialization.
Yeah.
So knowing that about yourself allows you to say, look, I have certain goals I want to achieve in my career. I got to be conscious of the fact that I could be an over socializer.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the first voice I hear typically in the office every day is yours, right? You're walking around, you're saying hello, and that's good. Like, I want you to warm the team up. You know, you get everybody ready for the day with your butterfly personality. You're a social butterfly. That's what you do.
Yep.
So as long as you're aware of the fact that if that's still going on 4 hours later,
then it's a problem.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
You're now interrupting people. You're impacting time management severely. But again, you've learned so much of this just by being in this environment in the role you're in for years now.
Yeah.
That you get it. You get what the impact can be, both good and bad, right? And how do you optimize the good and minimize the bad or the negative? I shouldn't say bad.
I had to adapt to certain ways. I think my personality, I had to learn how to not tone some parts back, but I guess reel them in a little bit.
Right.
My talkativeness.
Right. Look, everybody has that. There's a section on there called areas for improvement.
Yeah.
That's for the candidate. That's for the team member. That's not necessarily for the leadership. It's what do I have to focus on that I can improve on, knowing my dominant traits, right? So as a DI, I can be inconsistent because of many stops and starts. I can be crisis oriented, love a good crisis. Why? Because I am at my heightened energy for decision making and processing. I love that stuff, but I have to be very cautious. That is not effective leadership. I don't lead by crisis. I don't want chaos in my organization. So what do? I totally temper that side of my personality. I slow everything down. I surround myself with people that are different disc types, the I's that help me talk things through, even though I may not want to.
Yeah.
The SCs that are like, look, let's slow everything down. That's what makes everything work so well in our organization. So one of the sections I love the most is the behavioral hierarchy that they give you. It gives you your top 12 driving things in the workplace. So mine is sense of urgency. It's number 1.
Oh, that's number 2 for me.
Right. Well, that's because you're a higher D, right? So mine is urgency, competitiveness. I want to win and I want to win a lot. But that accounts for why the whole firm is basically contingency based.
Yeah. Because we believe we could win.
Not just PI, no fault silos too. And the breach contract silo, we do handle a majority of the work on a hybrid contingency basis. So it's because I know how to evaluate cases and I know the risks going in. And I have surrounded myself with a team of lawyers that are all similarly situated litigation attorneys. So I know the results are going to be consistent.
So you told us your top 2 behavioral hierarchies.
Right.
Can you give us 3 more? So your top 5?
Sure. So versatility, right? Bringing together a multitude of talents and a willingness to adapt the talents to changing assignments as required. I'm a 9 on the versatility scale. I'm not fixed in any mindset. I'm very open-minded and I can change on a dime. And frequent change is the next one, which is the ability to go from task to task or leaving a task unfinished. I can stick and move. That's good. I'll leave it unfinished. I'll leave it for somebody else to handle. It doesn't matter to me. Like that. But that's, again, just these are the things that are my highest behaviors. As long as I channel them the right way, can be very effective. So frequent interaction with others is also important as a leader. So that's number 5. That's
interaction is number 5 for
is
you?
number 5. Yeah. So it's urgency. I'm a 10 on a 10 scale. Competitiveness, I'm a 10 on a 10 scale. Versatility, I'm a 9.5. Frequent change, I'm a 9.2. And then frequent interaction with others, I'm a 9. So again, it's all about channeling them.
Yeah.
And making sure I'm aware of my weak spots, my blind spots. And I surround myself too with a leadership team that is not shy about telling me my weak spots. Like, I don't bring people on that are yes people. I don't want people that are yes people because I know my personality and I know what that could look like. I don't want to be yes. I want to be told no. I want to be told, hey, you didn't finish something. So I have coaches that fully hold me accountable. Because with my personality type, if I don't surround myself with those people, I'm not going to be an effective leader. I'm going to be very ineffective.
Yeah, you need people to balance out your personality type, like a Janira or a Carissa. Like, right. Janira keeps you on.
Dude, they all do.
They all do, yeah. You're right.
You know, they all do. My coaches are brutally honest with me about stuff because I tell them at the outset. I've been with Patrick Wilson. I've been with them almost 10 years now. Their organization was the one that actually turned me on to the DISC, was Atticus. And they said you should always do multiple layers of testing when you're hiring. The DISC is just one component of it. Yeah. It's just so effective and you were so intrigued by it that you wanted to do a whole episode on it.
I think it's great.
But yeah, for anybody that's listening, if you're running a law firm or any business, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not using some type of test like this that allows you to understand people and allows them to understand you. Yeah. You talk about the DISC. You talk about your DISC on interviews. You talk about the candidate's DISC on interviews. And I don't know, it's just kind of changed the whole culture of what we do. Yeah. And how we do it. And our hiring has gotten like, I couldn't even ask for better, like chef's kiss, you know, like that good. Like that's how happy I am with the way we've been hiring. And then I realized the weak spot in the process where I didn't love training and onboarding. So we brought on an HR person. And she's already taken the training and onboarding project just head and shoulders above where it is. And she's only in her first 90 days. Yeah. So again, I use my DISC to say, what is the complement that I should be hiring, right? Somebody for HR. We'll have Alicia on eventually, but you know, she's a high I. Yep. And you need that, right? You need to have somebody with a moderately high I that loves people, loves to interact, because that's the whole job is people. Yeah. I mean, it's
human resources.
Yeah. So it gives you a graph so you could see a graphic representation of your 4 traits, which is crazy. If you look at mine, it's like...
That's scary.
It's crazy. And again, I haven't taken it since 2015, but...
I think we both need to retake it.
Now, it also gives you your personal motivators, right? Yep. I'll take it again. I mean, this was the second time, but Utilitarian, I talked about, that's my first motivator. I'll give you the top 3 if you want. There are 6. So Utilitarian is the first, right? I'm very motivated by money. And I explained why earlier. It's also a way I keep score. Are we making progress? Are we not? That's one of the chief KPIs. That being said, it's not the KPI that I revolve the mission of the firm around. It's just a way for me to know, are we winning? Yeah. Are we not winning? Are we not winning as much as we should?
That's the competitiveness.
Yes. And I use that as a barometer. Theoretical. I have a strong thirst for knowledge and I love learning. And that's theoretical, which is why I'm always consuming podcasts and what I was so excited about doing this podcast for, right? Not because I think that I'm a guru. You know, I hate that word. I don't think I'm a guru, but I have learned so much through the years in a business setting, in a client setting, that I felt like I could speak on these topics with a high level or a high degree of knowledge and experience backing it up.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. To shortcut the journey for people that were 5, 10, 15, 20 years behind me, either starting out their law firm or clients, to give them a perspective of different law firms that are out there, what to look for, that type of stuff. My third motivator is individualistic. Like, I like to do my own thing. That's why I started my own law firm versus working for somebody else. So I have a very high individualistic score. And then there's the other 3 that are there in descending order. Like, I could tell you that aesthetic is my lowest because I don't care about form over function. I don't care what something looks like. I could care less. What I want is functionality. Yeah. That's my utilitarian score. Yep. But this comes into play in my marriage, right? Like, my wife has a high aesthetic. She wants everything to look beautiful. She's like, she loves beauty. So could care less. And then the running joke is, yeah, we know you're so aesthetic. My daughter uses the word, oh, this is aesthetic. I'm like, I think you're using the word wrong right now. You don't buy hand sanitizer because it's aesthetic.
She definitely gets that part from Jen.
So, yeah, so I think that it's a very valuable test. It goes into, okay, so let's talk about why all businesses should use it, why all law firms should use some type of hiring test. I'm only going to speak about the DISC because it's the only one I really have experience with.
Yep.
But I love it because I understand it. Like there's another one, the Omnia.
Okay.
I've used it before. I don't love it because I don't understand it to the point where I don't want a tool. Again, my utilitarian side. I don't want a tool that I constantly have to be on the phone with my coach to explain it to me.
Yeah.
The DISC I get.
And
if you're a high I, I know I'm in for a lot of talking. I get it. That's simple. Like I like simple, basic concepts. The older I get and the more experience I get in doing what we're doing here, the more I'm moving away from complexity to simple. So I don't want a test that I have to have somebody constantly explaining to me. Somebody recently recommended the Colby test. I don't know what it is, but I also tend to not want to have to relearn something when I've been using a test that's been working for so long.
Yeah.
But if you use it, it will dramatically improve communication, productivity, efficiency, not only between team members, but with your clients. Like you can tell if somebody's a high I. So you know if you're having a client meeting, you better set aside some time and listen. Active listening, which I'm learning to do and I'm studying it every day because it does not come naturally to me. I don't think it comes natural to most people, actually, active listening. I think it's very difficult, but I think it's worth the time investing in learning how to master these communication skills and styles. And the DISC is a fantastic tool. It also helps you resolve conflicts. It improves team dynamics, right? So a lot of times you'll see similar DISCs. They start to click together, right? Like there's other high I's in the office and you guys are all like social butterflies in the morning. Like, I think you do an outfit of today, walk away type of thing every morning. Oh, look at everybody's out. Those are the high I's, the high SCs. They're drinking their coffee quietly at their cubicle, waiting to get rolling. Yeah. And they'll say hello to you, but it's painful for them.
Get moving.
You're lucky if they turn around. Some of the SCs in my office, I had to get used to. They don't even want to turn around and say hi. They don't want the interaction, right? And I couldn't take that personally, although I did say to somebody, could you at least turn around and say hi to me? Like, I get it. I get the DISC, but like I need somebody to acknowledge me and just say good morning, like that's my high I, right? Yeah. So I walk around every morning. I say hello to everybody. I say good morning. I do a little bit of talk. I don't love small talk. So I usually say good morning and
you try to move on.
And I move on unless it's your office and then I get stuck because you need to talk. You're like, oh, I'm doing fine. If I ask you how you're doing, you give me the answer. Yeah. And it ain't short. It's usually, I'm good. Things are awesome. Or it's, I'm not that good. And I was like, listen, I was just asking how you were doing, like hypothetically, like you're supposed to say good and I got to go get my cup of coffee now.
Yeah. But also you are so hard to get, like, obviously you run a 30+ person firm and you have a lot of people that you need to speak to. So the moment that you pass my office, I'm like, oh, you're coming in for 5 seconds because I have this and this. So like any moment I get, I'm like, perfect. Time to talk. Right. We have stuff to go over.
But at least so there we're working it out, right? Like you need certain things answered. You say, look, I need you for 5 seconds. Come in. Now I can do that, right? And I know it's not going to be 5 seconds, but I can do that and give you what you need so that I'm not the choke point for, it might be approving, I don't know, TikTok videos or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But understanding the behavioral styles, the communication styles, it helps resolve conflicts. It helps avoid conflicts. And it does improve team dynamics. I mean, our culture has never been stronger. One of our core values is kind candor. That's based upon how I believe communication should be, right? There are people that don't like to communicate directly. It's tough for them. Yeah. But you can still be kind. So if you're kind and you're truthful, then you're communicating effectively so that people know where they stand. And if they're doing a great job, great. But don't tell somebody they're doing a great job if they're not. And then 2 weeks later, you got to fire them. And they're like, what the hell? You told me I was doing a great job. Yeah, that's maybe because somebody was afraid of having a uncomfortable conversation. So you don't like conflict. If you're running a department where you have people under you, you might have to terminate somebody someday.
Oh, it's so hard for me.
Yeah, you already having a panic attack. I could see you look in my face now like, oh my God, you wouldn't make me do that, would you? Like, not right now.
We've had moments, like with like freelancers that I tell you all the time, I'm like, oh my God, it's so difficult. And you're like, Juliet, this is just what needs
part of the
to be
job,
done.
man. It's part of the job. Like if a freelancer's not working, you got to say, listen, we're moving on after this date. I think improving and working on team communication should be a focus for every business. And that's really one of the biggest benefits you'll get from using the DISC. In hiring, I love it because people that know themselves really well and are introspective, they love the DISC.
Yep.
Because they use it as a tool. They go, oh my God, I learned so much more about myself. This thing was amazing. And I did an interview with somebody recently. This will show you the importance of the DISC assessment in hiring, right? I did an interview with somebody that we ultimately hired, who's a fantastic addition to the team. Very special guy. I talk about him on LinkedIn all the time because he convinced me to hire him. He didn't have a lot of experience in the space, but when I say he's a special guy, he's ex-military for, I think, 10 years, super disciplined. He went into the law later in life as an attorney. When the military didn't work out, he got injured, right? Jumping out of a plane of all things. He broke his ankle, I think. But when we talked to him about the DISC and we got up to that section of the interview, he said, what do you think? And I asked this question on a lot of interviews. What do you think if we hired you and 120 days later, it wasn't working out? What do you think the reason would be? He said, my tendency, my attraction towards perfection, which was tied to his DISC. I want to say he had a higher C.
Okay.
And high C's can get stuck on perfect. And he said that could look like I am not as productive as I really am if I get stuck on making something super perfect.
Yeah.
And right, when you run a business, and you will hear a lot of law firm business owners that know what they're doing use the phrase, done is better than perfect. Writing the one perfect motion, but allowing 14 other files to not be tended to is not the best way to practice. You got to write well. You got to win on the motions you write. But there reaches a tipping point where you're obsessing over it and you got to get it off your desk. At some point, you got to file the opposition. You got to file the moving papers. But that's all tied to the DISC.
Yeah.
And the fact that he knew that about himself, that was probably the most insightful answer I've ever gotten on that question. I've heard people say, I can't think of anything. You would never fire me. Okay. I'm too good at what I do, and it makes people around me jealous. Whatever the answers are, but like there was a genuineness to his answer that I was like, wow, that was an insightful answer. And everybody that was in the room agreed. Like he really put a lot of thought into that. And we sat there in silence for like 3 solid minutes. When I asked the question, we sat there for 3 minutes to allow him to reflect on it. I was not going to talk. I wanted to hear the answer. So using the DISC, if you have a wills, trust, and estate firm, you don't want somebody who's got a high D. You just don't. You don't want somebody who wants frequent change and high conflict. That's not the estates world. The estates world is calm, unless they're doing litigation, estates litigation. But if they're drafting estate plans, you don't want somebody who's a high D. They're looking for like trial work. They're looking for litigation high Ds. So using the DISC assessment as a hiring tool, similar to the way you found marketing, right? If I was looking for marketing, let's say, God forbid something happened to you, right?
Okay.
I would take your DISC, I would take your resume, and I would craft the avatar of Juliet, because that's what I would be looking to hire.
Nobody's replacing me.
Nobody's
We're just putting that out there.
I'm just putting it out there. No one is replacing. But in a God forbid scenario,
yeah, of course,
I now have tools. So now when we craft a job description and even a job ad, we do have an avatar of what that person, where we've seen people succeed in that role in the past, what those DISCs look like. Now, again, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
So if somebody's got 25 to 40 years of experience, that won't be as important. But when all things being equal, when you have the DISC, your success rate goes to like 80% on hiring if you know how to use it, because you're not putting people in roles that are not well suited for their DISCs.
Yeah.
I know I'm hiring an intake person right now. You got to be a high I.
Because they got to love to talk to people.
They got to love to talk. And they should be a higher D because they got to be able to close.
Yeah.
So you're a high ID. You're actually great for sales because you know how to close. You were not even aware of that yet about your DISC, but high DI or high ID can relate to people, can talk to people, and can close. If you're high I purely, you're going to just keep talking. You might not be able to close the potential client. And so that's where the DISC comes in again. Using the DISC during hiring, I think, is key. So for us, we try to match what's the right person for the right seat.
Like, for instance, in our no-fault department, we know and have seen that high SCs work best in the no-fault department.
Yeah, because they like to know the structure. Mm-hmm. They like to know the structure of the job and what's expected of them every day in that role. Much more than a high D, right? Or even a high I. Mm-hmm. The SCs love predictability, and that's a good thing. And no fault, which we're going to do like 14,000 files this year, that kind of volume is stable, predictable, and yeah, they thrive on it. You see the way they thrive on it, right? Yep. And there is a high predominance of SCs in no fault. It's the same thing in my accounting department. So my wife heads up the accounting department. She knows her numbers. Yeah. She's the accounting manager. She interfaces with the external accountant. She interfaces with the fractional CFO, but she has somebody under her who's a high SC who love the details. She's fantastic at auditing. She is fantastic at financial accuracy. You want somebody who is to the penny. And the person that's working in there is to the penny. And she does a fantastic job. So my numbers are always spot on accurate. And I love that. It also allows you to predict things, right? So when you have somebody that's screaming high I, you talk to them about it. You say, listen, you are aware that you have a tendency towards over-socialization. That could be an issue. Yep. Are you aware of that? I've had people leave because they were like, look, I just need to socialize more. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You just can't do it here. Like, you're interrupting 30 other people. You can't just walk around all day with a cup of coffee in your hand socializing. They did. They also left because that was important to them. They found a job at a different type of company that they could actually do that. And again, there was no hard feelings about it because it's their disc. Yeah. Of course, that's a risk. And that risk bore out. And they said, look, it's just a better fit for me. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So it helps us make better hiring decisions. And it also helps us reduce turnover. We have what I think is very low turnover compared to the statistics I hear from my law firm coaches and stuff like that. And I attribute that to when you tie people's dreams and successes for what they want on an individual basis to their individual seat and how that plays into the rest of the law firm, that makes people want to stay. And the fact that even though I communicate in a very distinct way, I adapt that on an individual basis for you versus Janira versus Jada, so people feel heard and understood because we talk to them in a way that works for them. We talk with them in a way that works for them. That's pretty much it. I mean, if you're not using a disc, we have somebody who'll be on the podcast later. You know him. He's a real estate development guy. He started using it because I talk about it so much. Right now, the problem is he has not been trained in it. So I don't know if he is aware of how to best use it, but he's also not very open to coaching. So
guess you're going to have to talk about that with him when he comes on.
Yeah. So the main point of the podcast, you want to be intentional about your culture. Yep. As a business owner and a law firm owner, it's everything. Culture eats everything for lunch. And I think that's actually the title of a book. I think it is actually. Culture Eats Everything, I think. I have to look into that. But if your team is important to you, and they should be, because that is the business, is your people, what better way to maximize everything than with a tool that helps you understand them? So I can't overemphasize enough how valuable the disc has been as a tool, both for the business and my personal side. And I would encourage anybody listening to this to consider using the disc in your own business or in your personal life, right? And even if you work for a company, what better way to be a rock star performer than to understand yourself on a deep level, what your strongest attributes are? So I think it just applies to everybody. I think it's a fantastic tool.
I love the disc. I talk about it so much that my mother even took it. She's a high C, which definitely makes sense for her. She's a high CD.
And isn't she a controller, a financial controller? Yes. Yeah, she's in the financial space and she's a controller.
She's a high CD, so she's a pretty scary woman. I'm not going to lie. And then I talk about it so much amongst friends as well that a friend of mine, she recently took it, funny enough, for her company, for Pepsi, which is like a national company. And they're making their management teams take these now to figure out how to best be managers. And it was funny because she just sent me hers, and
What is it? What are her two dominant traits?
Her two are IS,
Okay,
which makes
so she's
sense
like
for
you.
her.
Well, she's not like you
No,
to the
she's
extent.
not.
She's more like
very
my
steady,
wife.
yeah.
She's more like my wife, which is great. Like if you think about my wife's disc as an IS,
Yeah.
it complements mine so well. Because I have my moments where I'll do a lot of talking. That's fine. Especially on this podcast. Right. Especially on the podcast. But the fact that she's an S offsets and stabilizes my chaotic high D. Like my wife's not putting up with any shenanigans from my chaotic, my predilection towards chaos or firefighting. I got a 13-year-old at home. She wants a stable environment. She provides a stable environment, and she makes me more stable. So she balances me out, which is why I'm pretty sure that she's probably the only woman I could have married for 14 years and been happy the way we are, you know? So in conclusion of all of it is do some kind of hiring test, but I can't recommend enough the disc. It's cheap. It's $60 or $75 a test. And, you know, if I'm hiring 4 people at a clip, I'm paying for everybody that's taking an interview. I want to understand who I'm meeting with and talking to. And again, it's just a guidepost. There's no hard and fast rules. And you will find exceptions where somebody's disc is one thing, but their dominant traits are not consistent with that. But I do find it very accurate. So I highly recommend it. Thank you for actually picking this topic because I didn't realize how much I really value the test. For me, it's the gold standard.
Yeah.
You know, as far as hiring tools. You know, we use other stuff, but this one is like the gold standard.
Yeah.
And that's it. So thank you for listening to the Lead Counsel podcast. I'm your host, Tom Tona, here with Jules. You can listen to us anywhere that you can download podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, all other places. And if you want to reach out to us anywhere, just Google TonaLaw and you can reach out to us on any of the social media platforms. We're very active on LinkedIn and TikTok the most. And that's both myself and Jules responding to you. So we don't outsource that. That's us. So if you have anything you want to hear, talk about, or discuss, feel free to reach out. And also, when you are checking out the podcast, please leave us feedback. Leave us a 5-star review. It'd be greatly appreciated. And share it with anybody that you think would find value in what we're talking about.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.